Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I want to start by sharing a piece of feedback that one of my clients for Season to Shift, my 6-week mastermind for moms, shared that's always stuck with me. She said, I hadn't asked myself what I wanted in years. I was too busy keeping everything else running. Does this sound familiar to you? Being so busy, making sure everything and everybody else is covered that you forget to ask yourself, what do I want? So over our 6 weeks, we worked together and we gave her the space to figure that out. And now, instead of feeling trapped in the day-to-day grind and resentful of the demands that come along with being a modern mom, this client is remembering and making room for what lights her up. They might be morning walks, time spent on a hobby that isn't about accomplishing anything, being with friends, or just being alone for a while without feeling guilty. While these things might not seem major, if you don't stop sometimes and give yourself space to take stock of life and really tune in to what's lighting you up and energizing you, along with what's depleting you in any season, it's really easy to get stuck on autopilot. And the way you stay on autopilot is by changing nothing. So if you've been putting yourself last and you're ready to remember a lighter version of yourself who maybe isn't facing her days with so much clenched, forced energy, this is your final chance this year to join Season to Shift. Doors close this Friday at 12 p.m. Only a few spaces remain. This program will sell out, so snag your spot. You can visit myelectricideas.com/mastermind/, or you can simply email me and my team will get you set up. You can email me at whitney@myelectricideas.com. We start next Wednesday, September 25th. If you're ready for some breakthroughs, I hope to see you there. Okay, on to the show. Today, I have an incredible conversation with Israa Nasir. She's a psychotherapist, speaker, and founder of a digital mental health brand called Well Guide. Today, we're going to talk about her upcoming book called Toxic Productivity. I had the privilege of reading it early, but it officially hit shelves in mid-November. So be on the lookout. I want to read you a little blurb from the back of the book because it's just so good. It says, in a world obsessed with getting more done, toxic productivity unmasks the hidden roots of hustle culture and dismantles the myth that doing more makes you more worthy. I don't know if you all feel this as much as me, but we definitely live in a society that celebrates the scramble and pushes us to do more, buy more, achieve more, all with this promise that it's supposed to make us feel like we're having a more successful or meaningful life. And sorry to upset that apple cart, but sometimes that's just not true. Whether it be from society, teachers, parents, many women have absorbed these messages that keep us busy, but never feeling like enough. And I've had enough of that. So let's get into this very timely, very inspiring conversation. Hi, Israa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Whitney. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I want to start with a quote that will set the stage a bit for our conversation about productivity. So in your book, you say this: throughout childhood, our parents and teachers encourage us to mine our potential for all we can achieve. In college, our scope expands. We want to maximize our contribution to the world, leave our mark, and make a difference for the better. But as some of us reach adulthood, these lofty goals tend to boil down to a single, urgent imperative. In order to have value, we have to produce more value. I'm wondering if you can start by helping us understand that critical tipping point where we go from feeling like we have a strong worth ethic and wanting to contribute positively to the world into what we're going to dive deeply into, this area of toxic productivity.
Thanks for pulling that quote. I haven't read my book in a couple of months, so it's always really nice to kind of be brought back. And it's interesting to see which pieces resonate with which person. So it's been a really interesting journey for me as I've been talking to a lot of people. But to respond to what you were saying, I think that this tipping point comes for people at different points of their life. For some people, it develops very early on that I have to do more to feel accepted and to feel belonging and to feel valued. But I think as we enter adulthood, our society at large starts demanding that from us in every sphere of our life. So when we're in school, yes, our academics do demand that from us, but I think we're shielded from like the mechanics of how the world runs. And once you enter the workforce, like all the guardrails are off. It doesn't matter if you're 21 and entering the workforce because, you finished school at that time, or if you decided to do a lot of post secondary and you're 31 and you enter the workforce, the guardrails just immediately come off. And so then the world starts demanding that you produce more value. And if you don't produce it, then you are not valuable. And so if you already have this foundation that is kind of built in from childhood, it just becomes exacerbated. And the thing that I notice a lot is just from like a developmental perspective, different stages of our life have different goals, right? If you kind of go into developmental psychology. And in adulthood, like young adulthood, like all of that starts coinciding. You're supposed to make meaning out of your life. You're supposed to give back. You're supposed to build reasonable long-term relationships. And so the system that's telling you to do more is now telling you to do more in every area of your life. Whereas when you're in school, it's kind of like just academics or extracurricular or your family. You're still kind of shielded, even though you might be feeling it, but it all just kind of falls on your lap the moment you enter adulthood, which is here in our society, entering the workforce.
So, with your female clients who, let's say, are in this adulthood phase of life, what are some thoughts or statements that clients often share with you that give you the indication that they have this toxic productivity mindset?
Some of the most common themes that come up for somebody who is struggling with toxic productivity is vague sense of not being good enough. And that comes up in many small ways and statements. And even like if I were to ask some of my clients to journal their thoughts, like it's in the way they talk to themselves. But there is this like vague sense of nothing I'm doing is good enough, but I'm trying so hard. I'm trying to do everything and I'm always falling short. There is this theme of never reaching the finish line. And I often have to take a step back and remind them, but wait, you did reach the finish line for this thing that you said you would. But there's no acknowledgement that, hey, like I actually did the thing I was going to do. Because in toxic productivity, you don't stop to acknowledge or celebrate the fact that you actually achieved something. Most people who struggle from toxic productivity are kind of overachieving. And this is like myself included, especially when I was in my 20s. If I achieved something, it must mean it was easy. It must mean that I got lucky. Like if I've achieved it, that means it was achievable. So therefore, it's not good enough. I didn't try hard enough. I didn't pick the harder thing. I didn't challenge myself. And that kind of like mindset keeps you from celebrating your achievements. So you don't even lock them in as achievements. And so you're constantly feeling like you're not achieving something. I would say that that's the biggest telltale is this feeling of like, I'm doing stuff and I'm not moving. I'm doing stuff and I'm not getting things done, even though they are. And the second one is not really being able to shut off. So whether it's on the weekend and, they feel like they have to do a lot of self-care stuff, even that is like a pressure that they have to achieve. Whether it's how they're showing up in their friendships, like there's a pressure to achieve when they're home on their own. There's a pressure to do something with this free time, which is an achievement. So you're not able to turn off.
Yeah, I am going to definitely circle back to those. But before I circle back, I want to discuss a little bit because I think it's really common for modern women who are balancing careers and motherhood and community, taking care of themselves, running homes. It's probably pretty common to feel overwhelmed and like I'm not ever getting to it all. And I think people are also pretty aware of these kind of hustle culture messages that aren't helping the situation. But a lot of what you talk about in the book is how we learn harmful and unhelpful messaging about productivity in early childhood, that early. And I bet there's a lot of people who maybe are just completely unaware of what was said to them or what was modeled to them or what they absorbed that they maybe don't even realize has impacted them in this area specifically. Can you tell us about that?
A lot of toxic productivity culture feels very similar to ambition. And it feels very similar to wanting more and striving for better. And these are things that are very, very celebrated in our culture. And to some degree are important and to some degree are helpful and healthy. So it's really hard to pinpoint when it becomes toxic. So, the term toxic for me is intentional in this title because to me, it indicates something that was helpful, that was healthy, has now crossed a threshold and gone into unhealthy, harmful territory. So the most important thing is productivity as a desire is not a bad thing. Like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be productive. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have ambition or try to be in service of the world or in our relationships and also like want more, right? What I'm saying is, can we take a step back and reflect on all of the things that I want and reflect on whether those are things that I really want, or if those are things that I just inherited from my family, from my gender norms, from my culture, from my community? Why am I doing all the things that I'm doing? So that would be what I would ask somebody who is juggling a lot of things. And I would ask them to reflect on what is really motivating them to do all of these things. And, one of the case vignettes I share in the book is this woman who is hyper productive, hyper ambitious. She's a lawyer, she has two kids, and she's like always on the go and she's juggling all of those things. And some of those things are realities. If you're a mom, you are likely going to be extremely busy. No one is working harder than a person who has to care for another living being and keep them alive, and not just keep them alive, but also make them into balanced people in the future. That's a huge ask. So if you're doing that and you're also needing to do domestic things and you're also having a job and you also want to improve yourself, like, of course it's going to feel like a lot. So I would ask, and in the case vignette, that's how I work with this client is, which of these pieces are actually bringing you closer to the life you want to live? Or which of these pieces are things you're just doing because you think you have to do them, you should do them, you need to do them so you look good enough in front of other people. You're doing them because the other set of parents are also doing this. That's the piece. And that's where we can kind of trim the fat on our to-do list. And when you do things that you think you have to because other people are doing them, you're likely feeling more resentful and tired and irritated. So the call to action really is just do a little bit of an internal audit, do a reflection on where you're committed so that you can actually redirect your energy to the things that matter.
Big yes to all of that. I feel like I just want to reflect back that which of these pieces are bringing me closer to the life you actually want to live. It's such an invitation to get off of autopilot, too. I feel like it's really obvious that some people who are prone to toxic productivity will overwork. I found interesting, some of which you've mentioned, the incidences in your book where it was things outside of work. Like you gave a specific example and story about visiting Kauai and you noticing in yourself these traits. I think a lot of women could really relate. Can you give us a little sample of that story and kind of what it brought up for you?
Absolutely. So my husband and I went to Hawaii, Kauai. We were like, it's going to be unplugged. We're just going to be present with each other and like reconnect. And what better place than Hawaii? It is like genuinely like one of the most magical places that I've been to. And now we're on the beach. We have nothing planned for the day. And I am just obsessed with optimizing that moment. I want to make sure that this is all in my head, by the way, right? I want to make sure we're at the right, and this is, it sounds so ludicrous, but it's actually true. That's why I put it in there. Is I was actually doing this mental calculation of what is the best spot on this beach that is close to this and far enough from the water, but not too close to the other beach goers. And the sun is going to move. So, like, we'll always have this like optimal sunshine. And then once I figured that out, then I was like, okay, well, like, now what? And then I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should like think about writing some pieces of my book because I was in the middle of writing this book. And I was like, everybody else seems to write in nature. Like Ernest Hemingway would like run off to the mountains of Spain to write. And like, that's what I should be doing. Because if I don't do this, then I've wasted this beautiful moment and opportunity where I could have written something really great. And now I'm just like stressing about it because it's not coming to me. And what's making me even more frustrated is my husband is just asleep. Like this man has no cares. He is just sleeping on, the beach towel, super relaxed within 10 minutes. And that just kind of got me thinking more and more about like, why am I being like this? But the first set of that was really just like the inner critic. It was like the mean, why am I being like this? After like, self-talk and all of that, it became the why am I being like this? Where is this coming from? It became more of like the curious and compassionate voice in my head. And that really indicated to me that I have a very deep desire to make sure that I am maximizing the time that I have. I have a very utilitarian relationship with time, and it's something I'm continuously working on. And that's what I would say to anybody who is reading the book is that this is not a destination we arrive at and then stay forever and ever. Like there will be times where the conditioning is going to come up. The stuff you've learned as a child is going to come up. That doesn't mean that you failed at personal growth. It just means that you're a human being and at different seasons of your life, it'll come up for you again. And in different seasons of your life, you're going to be so good with your relationship with work and boundaries, right? So I think what that reminded me is that, or what I was reflecting on afterwards. Obviously, the story made it to the book, so that moment ended up being utilized, but not the way I imagined. But it was really important for me to put in instances that showed that productivity mindset exists outside of work. It's not just in the workplace where we are trying to be our best and optimize and be efficient. We are doing it with our bodies. People are measuring every single aspect of their bodies to make sure it's optimized and hyper focus on the type of food they're eating. And that creates this like new unhealthy relationship with food. We're doing it with our relationships. We're doing it with our friendships. It's just everywhere.
Well, I know that many of the women in my community are wellness forward, and I think your discussion around how toxic productivity patterns can also show up in this area was interesting. One of the anecdotes that I was thinking about was when you go to a bookstore with your friend and you almost force yourself to buy a nonfiction because you should be growing, you should be learning. Can you tell us a little bit about that in case I think a lot of women might see themselves in that?
Absolutely. So sometimes the productivity mindset really transforms into personal development, and that's a mask it wears. But personal development on its own is not a bad thing. But if that's all you're doing and that's the only thing you think has value, and you're now devaluing art and beauty and culture in service of constantly feeling like there's a deficiency in you, that you need to become better, you need to consume more, you need to be more wellness oriented, that is just, again, the same framework showing up in a different way, a different aspect of your life. So in that anecdote, honestly, it was probably one of like the more heartbreaking moments of my life without sounding too dramatic, because I am like an avid fiction reader. I have been writing short stories for a very, very long time. And in reflecting on that moment again, I felt sad for that woman in the bookshop who is me. I felt sad that I didn't value fiction and I had stopped reading fiction, and I was just so focused on needing to improve myself that I genuinely feel at that time in my life, I didn't feel that I was good enough, that I didn't feel like I was doing enough. And that's why I needed all of this external content to constantly feel like I'm on the move. I'm getting better. I'm getting closer to my finish line. But there's a lot of beauty in fiction and art that is, for our joy. Like, when did I stop caring about joy? Why did that fall to the bottom of my list as a frivolous thing? Right. And so I think that makes me sometimes really sad for my younger self. And if anyone who is listening and where you feel this way, I would invite you to reflect on when this happened for you. Why did you start devaluing joy, and how you can just start to bring it into your life in small ways?
You outlined three major subconscious motivators of toxic productivity in the book. And I'd like to, even though we've touched on them a little bit, I'd like to just give you a chance to share insight on each of these. So I'm going to read each one and then we can talk about them. So, top of the list, you said shaming yourself for not being good enough, smart enough, fast enough, or simply enough. Your habits are an effort to make up for what you believe you lack. So, can you give us an example in maybe your client work of where it becomes really clear that somebody's motivations with these habits are not in a place that's supporting positive personal development and happiness, but rather, you said, an effort to make up for what you think you lack, which is sad.
It is. And I think that, I mean, your viewership is, you said it's mostly female. And so I
Yeah.
would say, I'll kind of put it in that lens. I do think a lot of women constantly feel shame for not being as good as the other woman that they're seeing. And we bring that in to a lot of different areas of our life. And the one I'll kind of share about how shame shows up is with one of the clients I mentioned in the book who felt that, there was a lot of shame around not having the job and the salary that her friends had. And so that meant that she was not good enough, that she was ashamed that she wouldn't be able to do these like elaborate bachelorettes and these elaborate like other things. And that prevented her from being connected with her friends. Shame creates such a big barrier between you and another person. When you start feeling like I'm not good enough, like shame is this internal emotion. It's like an introspective emotion that is telling you that you are not good. It's not saying what you did is not good. It's not saying what you're not doing is not good. It's saying you are not good. You, the person at your core, are not good. And because of that, people don't value you. Because of that, nobody's going to love you. Like, that's a really, really scary and sad place to be in. And when your value is connected to external markers, like a job, like your salary, like your physical form, it becomes like this. It becomes variable in life, right? And so if you lose your job, you start thinking that I'm not good enough. If you don't have enough salary, you think I'm not good enough. And so in that way, shame creates this distance between you and other people. And you end up feeling very lonely. You feel disconnected from your friends. You feel like nobody will understand you. And then you start performing, right? Then you become performative in your relationships because you don't want people to know how bad you are. And so that looks like overworking. That looks like, purchasing things to portray a certain type of lifestyle. It looks like working out too much. These are the foundations of like disordered eating habits, right? It looks like a lot of things that manifest in these different ways. And so shame can be an incredibly powerful motivator. Shame will get you started. It will get you started on the thing that you have to do in this like extremely fast pace, but shame will not keep it sustainable. So you'll eventually not be able to meet that pace that you started on. And so you'll stop. And the moment you stop, shame becomes, and then you go again. And so I think, I don't know how common this is now, but like when I was growing up, in the 80s and the 90s, which, oh my God, it's so far away. My mom's generation of women would often do like yo-yo dieting. Yo-yo dieting is the biggest tangible example of how shame operates. You do this like thing really fast, you make all of your changes, and it's not sustainable because shame is not sustainable. And then you stop, then shame comes louder, and then you kind of drop and you go even deeper. Then you pick yourself up again because shame is motivating you, and then you stop and then you drop even deeper the next time. It's very chaotic.
It's so interesting. Yes, I really appreciate the specific examples because I think it's just helps women see how patterns might be playing out in their life and where shame is, showing up. I know that perfectionism is second on that list of subconscious motivators for toxic productivity. You say in the book, being a perfectionist in how you meet others' expectations or even your own expectations of yourself, your habits are an effort to maintain a rigid ideal of what you should be. I think we've talked about that, but anything else that you want to add?
Perfectionism is actually just anxiety. It's a very scary place to be in. And I mean, we've talked about the examples of it, but perfectionism is also a way of controlling how other people perceive you because you internally, again, don't feel that good enough about yourself. So making sure that you are meeting this ideal, make sure that people see you a certain way. And in the book, I talk about this wanted and unwanted identity. And the wanted identity is the thing that you were praised for as a child, and you realize this is how I should be. These are the things a good person is, or these are the qualities of a successful person. And the unwanted is the kind of traits that were very much discouraged in your home. And so you never want to be that. And they're both positive and negative, by the way, right? So they're not always bad. But perfectionism is a way to really align yourself with the wanted identity and make sure that other people always see you that way. And just the reality is that's just never going to happen because we are constantly evolving. And I think one of the biggest myths that we believe is that we're going to stay the same in every situation.
Okay, the last of these on these list of the subconscious motivators is you write about comparing yourself to others or to an ideal version of yourself. I think we know a lot about comparisonitis, especially with social media and all of that, and how to be wary about it and stay in your lane. But talk to me a little bit about the dangers of comparing yourself to an idealized version of yourself.
Absolutely. So that's the one I would struggle with a lot. I guess maybe by virtue of being the middle child, I was able to navigate social comparisons to other people really well from a really young age. But it took me a long time to not compare myself to the idea of who I think I should be, this like idealized version of my best self. And we are meant to use the best self as a way of aspiration, but it becomes this like very unhealthy comparison because sometimes the idealized version of ourselves is from the wanted identity that we grow up with. But it becomes so concrete, it becomes so fixed that there's no room for nuance or black and white or even shades. There's no scale. It's either one or zero, you're good or bad. And so that's a really, really black and white way of thinking. So when we compare ourselves to this ideal version of ourselves, what helped me, and I think that everybody does this differently, right? But what really helped me is to piece together who this person was in my head and what did she do and what did she not do and what did she like and what did she not like just in my head and writing it out and then really analyzing the pieces that were unrealistic to the life I was living in that moment. We create an idealized version of ourselves very early on, and it just kind of stays with us. It starts to grow with us, but it doesn't always reflect the life that we have, and it doesn't reflect the choices that we've made. So, right, the ideal version stays stagnant, but the choices we're making in life, the circumstances we come up with, like unanticipated things happen. But the ideal version doesn't know that. It's like this concrete idea in your head. And so making sure that you evolve and reflect and analyze what is realistic, what's not, and what needs to change with your changing circumstance is really important. So, a really, really good example of this is motherhood. People who choose to become moms have a very concrete version of what a good mom is. A lot of it is in reaction to their own moms. Sometimes it's in parallel to their own moms. Oh, I loved my mom doing this. So I'm also going to be this type of mom, right? Let's just say that. But the life your mom led probably looks very different from your life circumstance. So to think that you're going to superimpose the fact that your mom, let's say, made cookies every single day for you when you came back from school, to think that you'll be able to do that, but you work differently than your mom is unrealistic. But your ideal mom is this like mom who does this for you. So I need to do it for my kids. But if you don't do it for your kids, not now you're a bad mom. But you're not really taking into consideration that your life is different. And so that's how I think, we need to evolve our ideal self to the life that we are leading.
I think that it almost, because it is a balance, even in my life, for looking to that, next best version of me and making sure I'm, open to shining at fullest watts. But also, I think that taking stock of what's realistic, given our current life circumstances, and maybe scratching some things off the list would be freeing.
Absolutely. It's liberating. It takes a weight off. And most importantly, it creates space to do the things that are aligned with your life right now and will help you connect more with yourself and the people in your current life, not this imagined life. And I think that's really important. We have so much clutter and noise in our head that it takes us away from the things that really matter.
I couldn't agree more. Since you brought up this idea of, what we learn from our own mothers, I think some women who are living in this busy, high demand, we can always on world want to model not being toxically productive to their children, but also balance that with showing they have ambition. What advice would you have for a mom who wants to strike that healthy balance and feel like they're getting it right?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think anyone ever gets it fully right. But I'm going to strive for that. I want to caveat, I am not a mom, right? So just everybody know this. This is my perspective, I think, just on like adults who are navigating multiple responsibilities, whether it's a child or elder that you're caring for, right? But I think in wanting to model good behavior, I say this with air quotes, healthy patterns in your home, you have to become aware of your own understanding of those things. So, to anybody who wants to model a healthier relationship with productivity for young minds, they need to understand that ambition can only happen if you have healthy productivity. If you have toxic productivity, you might be having spurts of ambition, but it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be long term. So, thinking about in your own mind, how can I have sustainable productivity and which of my habits are getting in the way? So, thinking about if I'm the kind of mom who overcommits and has every minute of my week scheduled, planned, and accounted for, how am I as an emotional mom? Am I quick to temper? Do I get snappy? What is happening with me? Because, yes, people often say moms are like super moms and whatever. I think that's a disservice to moms. That takes away their humanity. And now we don't give them the same grace that other human beings get. Now we're like, oh no, you're a super mom. You can do it all. But we have dehumanized mothers in our culture by making them too noble and on a pedestal. And so they don't have space to be messy. They don't have space to make mistakes. And I personally, as a non-mom, I feel a lot of empathy for the pressure that moms feel. But I would say that look at the actual messaging that you are sharing with your children. If you're always doing and you're not being, is that what you want for your kids? If you're always doing, but you're emotionally so empty that you don't want to listen to your child's stories, is that the message you want to model for them? I think that can be the entry point into introspection. How do I balance who I am and what I do so that I can share the right messaging with my kids? And for women in this day and age, the first thing I would say is please reflect on what ambition means to you. Because I think this is a little, I don't know how you feel about this next opinion, but I think we have been sold a huge lie about what ambition should be for people in general, moms or dads or whatever. Ambition is not working at all costs. Ambition is not working so much that you get sick. Ambition is not working so much that your kids only see you over the weekend, right? That is not what ambition is. Ambition is making sure that you are living a life that is aligned with the values that you have. And there's not a lot of extraneous fat, if you will, or extraneous noise that is taking you away from doing the things that matter. And I know this sounds so lofty and like vague, but I think it can be made very tangible.
I fully agree with you. And I think one of the things that I'm completely over in motherhood culture that I talk about a lot is this sense of like the mommy martyr and like women being like, oh, I'm just so scattered because I'm rushing around. I'm doing it all for my kids so they can have a better life. And in my opinion, that's what we're teaching them. That's what we're showing them. And they probably just want our attention. And it's hard. I think about this all the time in my own life. My kids are at an age where they have more demands in the evenings and it's tricky to navigate. But I think that sometimes what's helped me when it comes to making a decision, even if it's like, am I going to log back on something this one exception night? I'm not someone who regularly, works in the evening. It's like, what am I really showing them? I try to live out my days where they can see me in a way that I'd want them to live their lives.
I think what's really like a nice thing that I've noticed in the last couple of years is as the millennial generation is becoming parents, I'm seeing more and more millennials come into therapy to undo their own stuff, to reflect on the kind of parent they want to be. Like so many people are doing pre-parenting therapy right now
Hmm.
because they're in preparation for becoming a parent and they don't want to pass on, the generational traumas or even habits or have a good understanding of like gender norms in this world currently, and so they can unlearn some of the stuff that we were taught. It's very nice to see, I think, as a therapist, that people are so intentional and mindful. And you don't have to go to therapy for it. I think there's some really good books out there as well for parents who want to be more aware of their own habits. But honestly, like the key to this is self-reflection. Really being honest with yourself, not being cruel, but being honest. We confuse those two things, right? And we deem honesty as always a painful thing, but it shouldn't be like that. Being honest with yourself about like, are you happy with the way you work, right? Are you happy with the way you present yourself at work? Are you happy with your boundaries? And thinking about changing those will help you.
I agree. I know we're coming up on time, but I always like to leave women with something tangible that they can do and try on for size. And I admit, like, this is something that is an ongoing practice for me. I was the person who had two type A, very overachieving parents, youngest of three. And so, it wasn't until my adulthood that I just realized some of the patterning, and I'll give an example. Like, I used to be the person that would almost startle if my husband came into the room and I was relaxing. And I just didn't know how much I'd been permeated. In the book, you talk about cultivating boundaries and almost setting a ritual so that women actually can create rest in their lives.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you could give us some pointers here, because I think that this is something that a lot of women who resonate with this conversation probably could use some inspiration on.
Yes. So rest, I think, is really important, but we often believe it needs to look a certain way for it to be impactful. So, what I would say to someone who's very busy, and this is the feedback that I also get whenever I talk about rest on any platform, is we don't have time. I have two kids and I have this and I have that, and I don't have time to rest. This is a very privileged perspective, Isra. And so, what I would say is try to make it the smallest unit of behavior change in the beginning. If you try to do rest for 20 minutes a day, maybe that is unrealistic in your life right now. So start with very small increments of rest and try to do it at the same time every single day and see if you can actually tack it on to something that you're already doing. So that's called habit stacking. To add a habit to a pre existing habit, it makes it easier for you to implement this change. So, an example is if you are doing drop off. I think drop off is a very big part of, women's days if they have to like drive their kids before work or after work. And I think there was a study that just came out yesterday. a report that said 60% of students in the US are being driven to school now, whereas 30 years ago, over 50% used to walk. So fewer kids are walking to school now, even in my neighborhood, like where I grew up, kids are being driven to school now when I used to walk. And so if you're doing the drop off, see if you can even steal 5 minutes after your kids are dropped off to just sit in the car, not on your phone, not listen to a podcast, not responding to an email, just sit in your car for 5 minutes. What happens when you start doing that is your mind starts realizing the benefit of resting, because we are so far removed from rest that we no longer know what the benefit of resting is, because we're always trying to catch up on sleep or sleeping in on the weekends, or we're just trying to catch up. So if you ritualize that, your mind will start expecting it. Within 3 weeks, your mind will start expecting that 5-minute pause. Then maybe doing a 10-minute pause in the afternoon instead will feel more realistic. You'll be like, wait, if I've been able to do 5 minutes a day for the last 3 weeks, maybe I can do 10 minutes after I pick them up and take them to wherever it is that they needed to go. In that way, infuse rest into your life in a ritualistic way. So what I did is my mornings used to be super chaotic and I really hate waking up dysregulated, right? But what can you do? I can't meditate for like 30 minutes in the morning. I can't even work out in the morning, frankly. It's too aggressive for me right when I wake up. So what the small change that I made is I started waking up 10 minutes earlier, only 10 minutes. And I don't do anything when I have my breakfast and my coffee. And it's only a 10-minute thing. Like I'm drinking my coffee and eating my oatmeal or my granola. So it's not a very long breakfast, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not on my phone. I'm not posting on Instagram. I'm probably sometimes watching the Great British Baking Show or like a documentary just for 10 minutes. And that's my rest ritual. I feel good about starting my day. And it required me to just wake up 10 minutes earlier and change something. So just find a way you can do it within your day for a short period of time.
Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree. I think sometimes women wait until the vacation or the retreat or something like that. And I full-heartedly teach and agree, just integrating these small moments in your day and starting there, even if it's a few minutes, can really shift the needle. I always end with a final opportunity for reflection. I know you've had some great inquiries already in our conversation, but just in general, in this area of where toxic productivity might be running the show in our lives, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
Do I have to do everything that I'm doing? Or can I delegate it? Can I let it go? Can I postpone it?
Beautiful. So simple and profound. I know your book is coming out soon. I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about that and let us know where we can find you, follow you. I know my listenership is going to really enjoy this and want to connect with you more.
Absolutely. So yes, the book comes out November 19th. It's currently in the pre-order phase. So if you do order it before the 19th, there's a lot of really great exclusive content, like 2 free chapters, one on guilt, one on burnout, that didn't make it to the final cut of the book, worksheets, and like a book club reading guide. So highly recommend folks to try to get it before the 19th. And you can always find me on Instagram. I'm actually really active there. I'm the person who's responding to DMs and stuff. So if you have a question or something, you can just message me there. And if not, my website is the place to get to know everything.
Awesome. Israa, this was a pleasure. I can't wait to share this conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Whitney.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.